We're headed back to the world of the Greenbone Saga today in my review and just thoughts and feelings on Jade War. So, hello, my name is Zach. This channel is mostly science fiction and fantasy reviews with a little bit of everything else from comics to manga, business, and personal development. But today we are back squarely in the fantasy realm with Fonda Lee's Book 2 of the Greenbone Saga, Jade War. This is a series that, yes, even after the second book in the main trilogy, I'm still just lukewarm on. So I was sort of lukewarm and mediocre on the first one, Jade City, and unfortunately, while better than Jade City, book two continues that trend, and which is kind of hard for me to reconcile with because this has everything on the surface that I should love in a series. I'm a huge fan of that golden era of Hong Kong cinema, that 80s, 90s, early 2000s, triads, gangsters. This has that in spades. John Loon is, this kind of analogy-ish esque of like a Hong Kong, Singapore, island nation, Asian inspired island nation. It has martial arts and kung fu, which again I love from Hong Kong cinema and Chinese media. It has fantasy elements with powers and stuff, which I love from just general fantasy. It has politics. It has pretty decent world building, but there's something about it just hasn't really clicked. I don't know if it's the writing style, the characters. It is a more character driven story. So I think that's, if anything, that's maybe why I'm still sort of, middle of the road, lukewarm on and not loving, but it's still a well written series. It has a lot of fans. So I know this does resonate with a lot of people. So depending on what you're looking for in writing style, this has that in spades. If you're that more, I guess, character driven and emotional driven storyline. But with that said, this has definitely some positives, some very good parts that I enjoyed reading and listening to. So it, as I mentioned at the top, this does improve on Jade City. So Jade City, while okay, again, didn't like make me just enthusiastic to get to book two. I wanted to continue it because again, it has all these things I think I'm going to like, but I wasn't just, frothing at the mouth trying to get to next book. But I got my hold at the library, delved into it, and yes, it has that improvement. So the standout to me, what I really enjoyed was surprisingly the other characters that I didn't so much enjoy in book one. So the main one would be Shay, the sister character who was now she's the new weatherman here at the end of book one. Now she's come into a new role, and her arc was just more interesting. And the other, again, surprise maybe when going into this was Wen's character. So Wen is the wife of Hilo, and her character was really well done. I liked Shay and Wen's story. I thought those were the most interesting stories of the second book. And again, at the surface, Hilo plays a much lesser role. So now he's he's coming to his new role at the end of book one. So he's now the clan leader, leading No Peak. And yeah, the women in the story were much stronger, much better written, had more interesting stories. They had more interesting character development. So that really carried the book for me. And then the other aspect that I actually loved more than book one, so I'm talking about a lot of positives. So yes, it did have positive, is Andon's storyline. So Andon was, again, just mediocre in the first book. I couldn't really get behind his kind of schoolyard training arc with a little bit of love interest story. It just didn't really work for me, and he wasn't that interesting in book one. But what's well done that Fonda Lee really, I think, helped the series a lot was we expand the story from not just Mountain and No Peak fighting on John Loon, the Kakon kind of conflict here on this. We get more introduced to Espenia. So that was the other, I guess, Western nation that's in this world. So our character in Andon, so that's maybe why I liked Andon's story. Andon's the one that has to go to Espenia. So he travels there. We see him living in this Chinatown, which I'm not sure exactly the inspiration. It's probably a melding of a bunch of different cultures, like Fonda Lee did for John Loon, how it's kind of a little bit analogous to Hong Kong, but it also has elements of other kind of Asian cities. But Hispania, to me, again, being an American, it felt like San Francisco Chinatown, but I think it probably, of course, has other maybe elements she's blending from other kind of Chinatowns, but it felt very familiar in that dynamic, which again, I've seen in Hong Kong movies where where, they're in the Chinatown in America, like maybe not even Hong Kong, but a mainland movie, Detective Chinatown. Recently, Detective Chinatown 1900, I think was the full title. But that had this Chinatown Chinese aspect, getting acclimated in this new culture. But here in Jade War, we have, again, sort of the gangsters that are from the old world in the new world, and how they're adapting to it, and how things are changing the power dynamic, that they still kind of pay homage, I guess you could say, to the old ways, but they're also learning about the new ways. And I really enjoyed that aspect. That was probably the standout storyline as a whole. Whereas Shay and Wen were my two favorite characters. I liked the story arc with the Espenia story arc with Andon. Also in this book, didn't really love Andon's love interest storyline again. So yes, he's back with a romantic interest in book 2, and couldn't really care less about the romantic interest, but it was better done than the first book. So I will give Lee props for that I thought that at least the romance was more well done. But I didn't really like the other romance of the other characters. I just liked Hilo and Wen's relationship. I like Shay. She kind of, again, has a partner relationship, not like a romantic thing, but everyone has interpersonal relationships. This is that kind of book. So if you're looking for that, they're much more well done in the first one. So Lee is definitely getting better as a writer. The series is progressing. It's finding its footing more here in the second book in Jade War, and the expansion of the world. So going from just the no peak and mountain, infighting on this, but now we see some of the global politics with Espenia, how John Loon is kind of growing up and working together with his other trade routes, and how it's all influencing on the old world, the new world. So I like the direction it's going, and the clan war, just, more global scale, more interesting dynamic. And as you may have noticed generally on my reviews, I am a fan of world building. So I liked here in this second book, as the world of the Greenbone Saga expanded, we are still seeing a little bit of the magical, fantastical with what the Jade power does, the Jade corruption. But I think we didn't really get a lot of information of how the Jade was affecting kind of Andon, how it kind of corrupts. We hear a little bit kind of echoes of that, and that was one of the aspects I liked. I thought was interesting of book 1, but again, because I'm a world building kind of fan, so I like the understanding the mechanics of how the Jade works and what it means, and the legacy, and how the just the history of Jade and what it all how it interacts. Again, it feels almost like a Wakanda in the Marvel universe, how it has this resources that powers people, or like the X-Men, how in the Krakoa arc, how they control a resource, and this resource is used through the wider world. So the fact that the clans of John Loon, how they control the Jade and they distribute this to the wider world, and that's the part they play. So we see that on a global scale, on a larger scale here in the second book. And again, while well done, while it was a solid book, it wasn't an all-timer for me. It was still a decent read, better than the first book, but I can't say I'm super enthusiastic to read the third book. I am just much more invested in other series at the moment, so I don't want to discourage you from reading it if it had the elements you like. But I think if you like more character driven, if you like those character elements of the first book, you're going to really like the second book, because it ramps up and fleshes out the characters more. The character stories are stronger. Shay and Wen were great. I loved how their arcs handled by the end of the book, being very no spoiler, but both those characters grow by the end of the book. They have some really great moments, some great stories. Ending grows by the end of the third book, or the end of the second book, to a kind of predictable ending. I sort of saw where it was going just based on his character development. So it wasn't like a twist or surprise, but it makes sense for the character where Andon ends up at the end of the second book. And yes, eventually I'm going to get to the third book in the Greenbone Saga and finish out the trilogy and see if, Fonda Lee can land the plane for me and give it a satisfying conclusion. I know other people are satisfied with the conclusion, that the Greenbone Saga is a, big fan favorite with that kind of reader, and I'm hoping to eventually get to the final third book of the trilogy and close on a positive note. So those are my thoughts and feelings on Fonda Lee's Jade War. Still mediocre for me, not as much world building as I like in a story, but it had its moments. I want to get back to Hilo in the third book, and I want to see Shane Wen and hopefully see Andon's new role and how that plays into the finale to the Greenbone Saga. So thanks for watching this review, my thoughts and feelings on Jade War, and have a great day.